Take 3. Here we go. Interesting ideas for people who want to reload shotgun shells, or ammunition in general. We're going to do the all-brass shotgun shells that are made by stamping a piece of metal into a cup shape and then crimping the pieces to form the rim and the body of it. When they're made, they're usually made with large primers for pistols or rifles, cartridges, not for shotguns. Someone figured out that you could use a .234 or 15/64 inch drill bit and get away with then reaming them out a little bit and making it to where you could put in 209 primers. But he also noticed another thing. On normal shotgun shells, to make it to where it'll work with smokeless powder correctly, because you use a lot less powder, you had to fill up the bottom of these holes up to the same level. And he showed himself putting in a glob of glue and then having to re-drill it. Now, a bunch of people noticed a bunch of problems with this, but I'm going to bring this up really quick. 209 primer pocket conversion for full brass shot shells that use Berdan or Boxer primers instead. Use the drill bit in the original opening to make it to the correct diameter for a 209 primer, or whatever primer you want to use. Or just leave it as is and just keep using them. Now, next. If you need to fill the base of the primer's mouth inside the shell is flush by filling in this gap in here, one of the ways you can do it is to use overshot cards or cushion wads that are cut to that height and punch a hole in it just like you would the primer and put it in. It'll hold up the space. It'll allow you to set off your your propellant properly to shove the projectiles out. But you could also fill it with glue as well. But here's another trick. You could use a split straw, or a straw that happens to fit the diameter, or one of those metal straws from that you get at a coffee shop. It's the same diameter as the 209 primer. I use it to do checking and fitting because people don't look at you funny when you use a straw to check. Well, they do, but not as much as if they saw you with a primer. You put it into the hole and then fill the bottom up with it to the right height by having a mark on your straw or whatever. And when you're done, you pull it out and you don't have to re-drill it, and it's smoothed, so it'll fit the primer better. And the plastic type that he used, it was a hot glue, was the kind that he said was a lot like Gorilla Glue. Now, it's an interesting video and all that, but anyway, drilling and punching overshot cards may or may not work. A combination of these things, by gluing them together really quickly and then shoving them down there, might actually work better. And this is just so that when it goes off, the top of the primer is actually igniting the powder at that level. The other thing is to mold it on purpose using the butt end, if it's a 12 gauge anyway, the butt end of a CO2 cartridge or a Whippet cartridge to make it bowl-shaped, which actually improves the performance of it and thickens up the base. This way you can use low brass, which is usually steel anyway, and get away with it with holes I'm talking about that I'm going to talk about next. Making your own holes. You can completely gut, a shotgun shell, get all the plastic out of it, and reline it by putting in a metal tube that's brass, and make this. Yeah, as long as it's a brass rim on it. I have one, so I'm going to be using that. I didn't bring up how to do this because I didn't. I wanted to find that video. I have it linked down here below, I think. Next. Spindex star crimps versus the roll crimp. I've been trying to find a hand crimping method that would work for shotgun shells. The reason for this is really simple. They're wasteful in materials, but they are what you get out of the store most of the time. Instead of having a card and then crimping it in with something that seems to require a drill. What you do is you get the same tools that would be used on a loading press and just use it by manually. Apparently you don't have to do more than that. Also, someone found a way to do it using sockets, but it requires that it already be crimped before you do any of this. A pre-crimped or just plain old once fired shotgun shells are really, really plentiful, so it doesn't seem to be needed. Next one is to do it just like you would an old brass shell and just seal up a card on top, and that brings up again the hot glue method. One of the hot glue methods that people don't know about is putting in a disc made out of hot glue. You can just buy the stuff. It's sheet glue. You heat it up with a heat gun normally. Well, you take the top of the cartridge, push down, and put it in there and just remelt it into the rim. It makes it more consistent. Or you can just make gasket material out of the hot glue sheet or hot glue. I can't find the hot glue sheet anywhere, so you're going to have to make it, I guess. You put down a layer, press it down with a sheet of metal, a warmed piece of metal or a warm iron and set it down, let it get stuck, and then take it off with a putty knife. You have to make sure you have some sort of release material like Teflon or maybe oil. Next, a new form of action on shotguns. I thought of this, but I didn't know where I saw it from, but I couldn't figure out what it's called. Still don't have a name for it. There are 2 individual companies and or products that did the following thing. It's called a swing out, side swing, or side motion action. The action takes the barrel and kicks it to the side, relatively speaking. It's a lot like a break action, only it's sideways. And this is actually the way some over and unders started. Just take an over and under and tip it on its side, it's the same thing. The idea with that is that it would cause motion that goes right to left, which means during firing the gun, it might be loose, and you might have it go bang, bang. Okay, if it was a double barrel. But if it's a single barrel, it won't affect anything. The idea is to make it to where mechanically, the barrel is trapped between the shell is trapped inside the barrel and against the breech face. Well, that only causes a forward motion. All of them break open, but if they spin, there is no reason for that one form of force to open it. So you basically have a pin down here. And the reason you find them in double barrels is you put the mechanism for the pins in between the 2 barrels. That's why they did it. It's easier to do it that way. And the locking mechanism could be as simple as just a hasp going forward on the barrels and holding them in place. Now, video game item. I don't know if it was in a video game anymore or a cartoon. I've forgotten where I saw it before. Maybe I thought it up from a dream. I don't know. But the idea is make it a flare gun for the fun of it. 12 gauge. And you have a barrel that can spin either way, and it has a chamber on both ends. Okay, so you have your bullets, shotgun shells, sticking nose up. You take the barrel after you fired, jam it down, click the button to release the barrel, flip it around it, and it locks as soon as it hits the other side of the fence, and then you let go, and then it puts the other fence up, and now you're loaded to fire not just the shell, but the empty shell at somebody. It's an interesting mechanic for a video game. That's why I was thinking. That's what you call those animations. Those are called mechanics. Or not mechanics, those are called animations. The mechanic of it is that the reloading would be sped up and require 2 motions, and you would only be able to do 1 gun at a time, unless you did double and then fling it and made it to where it always spun in a specific direction, which means you would have a gun that would be left-hand and right-handed. And the mechanic in the game is that to do dual-wield spinny mode, spinner guns, you'd have to get a right-handed and left-handed one. If you ended up with too many right-handed ones, you wouldn't be able to use them for anything unless you learned a new talent or something. You could level up. An interesting game mechanic idea. But anyway, I'll try to include an illustration in the imager, mostly just a picture. It'll just be a really crude drawing done in paint. Next, pro tip. The diameter of a cartridge and the diameter of the bore that the cartridge fires stuff through are always different. The bore diameter for a 28 gauge for shotguns is 14 millimeter for the bore of the barrel, or 55 caliber. So a flare gun cartridge that has an integrated barrel is a 28 gauge barrel insert, but not chamber. Just an interesting thing I looked up. And that may have been where it came from. It may have been a flare gun that was made with this weird gauge. Anyway, it's 55 cal. AKA, it will almost, but not quite, allow you to just get away with putting another piece of tubing inside of it and throw a 410 shotgun shell in there. Again, blah, 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 blah. Anyway. Tungsten carbide button inserts for stone drills. Drills that go for oil exploration and that sort of thing. These are chunks of tungsten carbide. They can have all sorts of shapes, including screwdriver bits and all sorts of things. But they're really big usually, and they're for grinding up rock. And they put them on a round drill where they pump fluid in here to run off all the garbage and pump it back out, and they use some sort of muck. And the bits are put at various angles so that every time they go around, the next one will pass behind the other one and keep shoving more ground up rock. And they're also pounded in, so it's like a jackhammer rotating kind of thing, just like a stone drill. Here are the diameters and lengths for the common ones I could find. This is not all of them. This is the ones I could find that are significant for some reason. 1.125 or 1 1/8 inch long hunks of metal made of tungsten. They're sintered tungsten. And they can have a diameter of 0.791 inches, 0.771 inches, 0.62 inches, 0.762, 0.757, and 0.753. One of those sounds like a bullet diameter for an AR-10 apparently. But anyway, the funny part about this is those are the ones that would fit technically, not safely, unless you make a shotgun out of, make a new shotgun barrel. Take a normal shotgun and make a new barrel for it for firing weird loads, like let's say 79 cal. These would make tungsten carbide buttons into incredibly dense slugs. There's a YouTube video to Mouse firing these. And then brass pipe diameters below if you're curious about it. And brass overall length for 410 shells, because you might want to look that up. But the rim diameter for it is 0.535 inches. So yes, it would have to actually fit into a flare gun, a proper flare gun cartridge, the long skinny orange ones. If you make a metal one, that would act as a sub caliber adapter for 12 gauge so you could fire. You'd have to run another piece of tubing. And that's really about it. I just thought it was funny to bring up all these things that I found. So to review, I found a gun. There's only two companies, two brands and makes and models of gun that existed, and they're all like 10 gauge, which is weird, that had swing open or to the side break actions that looked like you took a double barrel over and under and tilted it, gangster style. And obviously you could make a single barrel. It would really be much more stable, and it wouldn't really need a locking mechanism to keep it in place. The shot itself would have all the pressure going forward and backwards only. It would be really weird if it even moved. So you could use a very weak method for holding it in place, which means that you could just make it to where you could even have the barrel held in place by a sheet of metal on top and bottom, so it's completely mechanically stable. And you could hit a button, put a cartridge in, spin it, and it would immediately load the next one. This would be a very fast load, end-to-end, 4-1 shotgun type of mechanism. It would require a trigger mechanism. It would require, honestly, a floating firing pin. A real gun would have to be made. But this would allow a person to have a gun that you could really, really load fast, even though it'd be a single barrel. You could just bang, clunk, spin, bang. And the action of spinning it could also, pull the hammer back. Next, primer pocket conversions for shells that are not supposed to have full-size 209 primers can be done. My only complaint about someone is they didn't think of just punching holes in overshot cards or whatever to fill it instead, or make it to where it's an even easier molding by using one of those stupid stainless steel straws you should never drink water through. But pro tip, the stainless steel straws you buy, they're reusable. They're not really cleanable because they didn't remove the seam in any of them. All of them have a seam inside of them and it collects garbage. Don't drink through them. I have one for using it for sizing gauges and also for holding onto nail points that I use for making little micro chisels when I'm doing woodwork, when I do little projects. And you could also, another thing is, since it's brass, you could fill up the entire base with pieces of brass sheet material punched, or brass washers. They will actually fit in many of these shotgun shells. And then, of course, the tungsten carbide buttons that are used for drilling holes in rock could be used to drill holes in other things. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.